My cheating wife mocked me about divorcing me and selling our home, but karma destroyed her life. Hey Reddit. My wife and I had been married for 8 years, and for most of that time, I believed we had a solid relationship. We weren't perfect, but I thought we had built a life based on trust, love, and mutual respect. I worked hard to provide for us, and we had a beautiful home together. Looking back now, I realize how blind I was to the warning signs. The late nights, the sudden secrecy with her phone, the unexplained weekend trips with her so-called friends. I ignored it all, trusting her completely. That trust was shattered when I discovered the truth in the worst possible way. One afternoon, I came home early from work to surprise her. She wasn't expecting me, and when I walked into the house, I immediately noticed something was off. The air felt different. There was a faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine, and I could hear muffled voices upstairs. My heart pounded as I walked up the stairs, every step feeling heavier than the last. As I approached our bedroom, I could hear laughter, her laughter, followed by hushed whispers. My hands trembled as I pushed the door open, and that's when I saw them. My wife and another man, tangled in the sheets of our bed, completely unaware that their little fantasy world was about to come crashing down. For a moment, time stood still. They both turned to look at me, their faces frozen in shock. My wife gasped, scrambling to cover herself while the man, looking equally guilty, sat there like a deer caught in headlights. I didn't yell. I didn't cause a scene. I just stood there, my mind struggling to process the betrayal in front of me. My wife stammered, trying to come up with an excuse, but I didn't want to hear it. Without a word, I turned around and walked out, ignoring her desperate pleas to talk. I knew in that moment that our marriage was over. I spent the next few days in a daze, trying to figure out what to do next. The pain was unbearable, but I refused to let it consume me. I contacted a lawyer, started the divorce process, and made arrangements to move out temporarily. I knew I needed space to think clearly. My wife, on the other hand, acted as if she was the victim in all of this. She called me repeatedly, begging me to understand and forgive her mistake. But this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice, one she had been making for months behind my back. Then, one day, she called me with a tone in her voice that I hadn't heard before. It wasn't regret or sadness. It was arrogance. She told me she had decided to take charge of the divorce and speed things up. According to her, she had found a buyer for our house and had already started the process of selling it. The audacity of it left me speechless. She laughed, saying she was moving on with her life, that she had found someone better suited for her, and that I should just let it go. Then came the final blow. She told me she was taking most of our assets since, according to her, she deserved it after everything she had put up with during our marriage. I was furious, but I didn't let her know that. Instead, I calmly told her that I would see her in court. What she didn't know was that I had already been working closely with my lawyer to protect myself from any financial losses. You see, the house wasn't entirely hers to sell. She assumed that because we were married, she could do whatever she wanted with it. But the truth was, my name was the only one on the deed. The house had been a gift from my late father, and he had made sure to put everything in my name before he passed. Legally, she had no right to sell it without my consent. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal battles and underhanded tactics from my wife. She tried everything to manipulate the situation in her favor. She even went as far as trying to claim that I had abandoned her, painting herself as the victim to gain sympathy in court. But my lawyer was sharp, and I had all the evidence I needed to prove her infidelity and malicious intent. The day of the hearing finally arrived, and I watched as her smug confidence slowly turned into panic. The judge wasn't buying her lies, especially when my lawyer presented proof of her affair along with the messages she had sent gloating about taking everything from me. The moment of reckoning came when the judge ruled in my favor. Not only was she denied any claim to the house, but she was also ordered to return any assets she had tried to take from me. To make matters worse for her, the man she had been cheating with? He had left her the moment things got complicated. I found out later that he had no intention of committing to her. She had thrown away our marriage, our home, and our life together for someone who didn't even care enough to stick around. As I walked out of the courtroom that day, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I was free from her, free from the lies, and free to rebuild my life on my own terms. But little did I know, this was just the beginning. There was still more to come, and what happened next would prove that karma wasn't done with her yet. Update. After winning in court and ensuring that my cheating wife got nothing from our home, I thought I was finally done with her. I was ready to move forward with my life, to put all the betrayal behind me. But as it turns out, karma wasn't finished with her just yet. A few weeks after the ruling, I started hearing from mutual friends that things were falling apart for her in ways I could have never imagined. It all started with the man she had thrown everything away for, the guy she cheated on me with. He was supposed to be her better option, the man who would give her the life she thought she deserved. But reality hit her hard when he ghosted her completely. Apparently, as soon as she lost the house and the financial security she had expected to take from me, he disappeared without a trace. She tried reaching out to him, but he ignored every message, every call. She even went to his workplace, only to find out he had quit his job and moved out of state. He had used her just like she had tried to use me, and now she was left with absolutely nothing. But that wasn't even the worst part. Since she had been so confident that she would win in court, she had gone ahead and made some drastic decisions before the verdict was even final. She had quit her job, assuming that the money from selling the house would be enough to support her for a while. She had also broken the lease on her apartment, expecting to move into a new place with her so-called soulmate. But when everything backfired, she found herself homeless, jobless, and completely alone. She had burned bridges with almost everyone who once cared about her. Her own family had distanced themselves, tired of her constant manipulation and selfishness. She had no one left to turn to. Then, out of nowhere, she called me. At first, I was shocked to see her name on my phone after everything that had happened. I debated whether or not to even pick up, but curiosity got the best of me. When I answered, I was met with silence for a few moments before she finally spoke. Her voice was different, no arrogance, no smug attitude. Just desperation. She told me she had made a huge mistake, that she had lost everything, and that she was sorry for what she did to me. She even had the audacity to ask if there was any way we could work things out, as if she hadn't completely destroyed our marriage. I listened to her plead for a few minutes before finally cutting her off. I told her she had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. I wasn't going to be her backup plan just because the fantasy she had built in her head had crumbled. She tried to argue, but I hung up. That was the last time I ever spoke to her directly. Another update. A few months passed, and life was starting to feel normal again. I had thrown myself into work, spent more time with friends, and even started dating again. I wasn't in a rush to jump into another relationship, but it felt good to be around people who actually valued me. Meanwhile, my ex-wife was sinking deeper into the mess she had created for herself. I hadn't checked up on her at all, but one of my friends who still kept tabs on her occasionally told me that things had somehow gotten even worse. After she lost everything, she bounced around from couch to couch, staying with whatever acquaintances would take her in. But that didn't last long. Her entitled attitude and inability to take responsibility for anything eventually drove everyone away. She had no steady income and no place to stay. She tried to get her old job back, but they refused to rehire her after the way she had left. She ended up taking a low-paying retail job, barely scraping by. From what I heard, she spent most of her free time wallowing in self-pity, blaming everyone but herself for how her life had turned out. Then came the final blow. Apparently, at some point during her affair, she had made some reckless financial decisions. She had taken out loans, maxed out credit cards, and spent money she didn't have because she was so sure she would be set for life once she divorced me. But now, with no house, no rich lover, and no real plan, those debts were catching up to her. She was drowning in bills she couldn't pay, and creditors were after her. She even tried to take legal action against me again, claiming she deserved some kind of spousal support, but the court immediately dismissed her case. She had lost in every possible way. Final update. It's been over a year since everything went down, and I can honestly say that I've never been happier. My ex-wife, on the other hand, has completely hit rock bottom. The last I heard, she was living in a rundown apartment with 3 other roommates, barely getting by. She has no close friends left, no financial stability, and no way out of the mess she created. She tried to reach out to me again a few months ago, sending a long email about how she had changed and learned her lesson. She even hinted that she would be willing to start over if I gave her another chance. I didn't even bother to respond. She wasn't sorry for what she did, she was just sorry that it didn't work out in her favor. As for me, I've moved on completely. I'm in a much better place mentally, emotionally, and even financially. I've taken back control of my life, and I refuse to let someone like her drag me down again. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that karma is real. She thought she could betray me, take everything, and walk away unscathed. But in the end, she only ended up destroying herself. And honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better outcome.